I'm back. We're into something special. Today, we're going to be reading It's Only Zillophilia If It's Done Right. And the summary is Han Solo likes a little pain with his pleasure, and Chewbacca is more happy to give him plenty of both. Han Solo absolutely had no idea Chewbacca was talking about. Usually he was the only one who could understand the garbled noises and growls that composed Wookiee speech. But at the present, he had no clue whatsoever. It was the Wookiee's fault. However, how could he possibly focus on letting his gaze down the silly darkness, feeling how his friend's muscles were enhanced and empathize that his fur was not its usual bouncy, fluffy self? He squirmed in his seat, feeling his trousers becoming uncomfortably tight. It has happened before, and it was still embarrassing. Honestly, after sharing cramped quarters for over 6 years, he was as horny as a teenager just from a shower. Chewy is in the shower, fur wet and shining with shampoo. Han's eyes glazed over as he sank into fantasy. He crawled into the small jewel, just barely fitting between Chewie and the wall if he parted his legs, spreading his hardness against the other's stomach, feeling the Wookiee's cock slip out of its shape and press against his glorious hand. Bars emerging from his desire. Oh, that cock would make him scream if it were. As it pressured inside, clawed at the walls, begged, bleed, an empty ache started to build inside, throbbing between his legs. He wanted to be stuck on the Wookiee's cock, howling and wailing. Asshole slick with blood and cum, thighs caving as Chewie rutted his thighs. Han came back to himself. Han came back to himself with a breathy whimper as Chewie placed a paw on the soldier, making a rumbling, questioning noise. "I'm fine," he said, voice hoarse with arousal. The Wookiee gave him a look that clearly said, "I don't believe you." "Really?" he insisted, shivering as Chewie leaned in and could smell his shampoo. Oh hell, there was no way to hide his reflection now. With his excellent sense of smell, Chewie would be able to hide, would only be able to smell the desire on him. He desperately looked for an escape route, but really, in deep space on board of a tiny ship, there was no way to hide from his only companion. He sank. He sank further into the chair, mortified at his obvious state of arousal. Oh, eh, eh, rousing. His cock pressured heavy and full against his zipper and demanded to be let out. Loud. His thighs wanted to part. His asshole felt empty, with aching with desire to be filled. What would Chewie think? He started in shock as the heavy paw on his soldier moved down over his chest to a movement that could be described as caressing. Then, with surprisingly dexterity, Han pulled Han's shirt from his trousers and slid his all underneath, touching suddenly overheated skin away, made him dizzy and breathless and desperately, frantically turned on. It set his mind reeling with shock to an extent he failed to notice the Wookiee huh? Divesting him of the rest of his clothing until he stood on the brick buck naked in front of his friend. Cock, cock rock hard between his legs. He did notice, however, when the towel fell from his friend's waist, right, and he could see the slit that which the Wookiee cock would emerge, ready to mate. He could see the tip poking out, signaling the other male was getting turned on, and more by the minute. Han fell to his knees, staring at the emerging cock with awe. It was slimmer than he thought it would be, but long. But it was slightly scattered in short, curved barbs designed to hold the cock inside to ensure the seed would take root. And to his surprise, it was much darker than he had anticipated, darker than his friend's fur, even when wet. He wanted to taste it, lick it, suck it, and then went and looked up to his friends with a question in his sweet, with a hint of salt, musky and male. It was a taste he could easily be addicted to. He continued to licking the tip, running his tongue over the sides, carefully avoiding the barbs, moaning with lust, doing what he fantasized so many times while jerking off. He he experimentally sucked the cock into his mouth, whimpering slightly as a barb cut his cheek, and the taste of his own blood mixed with the taste of manhood. It should it shouldn't have turned it on, but it did. He was like a bit of pain with pleasure, but this combination was exhilarant. He started sucking eagerly, fisting his own cock with increasing desperation. Chewie leaned against the wall, groaning in pain, running his heavy fingers through Han's hair in enjoyment. The noises only served to make the human more frantic. He wanted more, wanted it all. In slight pain, whenever a barb pressed against his tongue or cheeks, would only next time knock. Next jerking off. He The noises only served to make the human more frantic. He wanted more, wanted it all, and the slight pain whenever a barb pressed against his tongue or cheeks only served to heighten his pleasure. Suddenly, Chewie pulled away, and Han whimpered with disappointment. He wanted that glorious cock inside him again. Chewie pushed Han on the floor and manipulated on body until he was all fours, legs as far apart as he could get them. Then he admired the view for a moment. The human was stunning. All 10 legs and muscles, a strong back and muscle thighs meeting, slim thighs and a luscious fur and juicy behind, fitting perfectly in its paws. He pulled the cheeks apart and saw the ultimate opening he wanted to fill his seed with. It was small and puckered, and a curious shade of pink, not replicated in any other part of the human body. For a moment he wondered if he would even fit. But the whimpers and moans and little cries of Chewie, please, spilling from Han's mouth encouraged him to at least try. fuck the hum. He wanted to fuck the humans for months, and here he was, authoring himself like a female ready for breeding. Mouth encouraged from mouth Han's mouth encouraged him at least try, as he always wanted to fuck the human for months, and he was offering himself like a human ready for breathing. It would take a lesser Wookiee to resist. Really, Chewie leaned down and slid his tongue down the crag, touching the hole briefly. It quivered under his tongue, and he heard Hans cry out of pleasure. Ah! It was an interesting taste, musky and sort of strange. He looked at it again, wanting more of it. He kept licking, enjoying both the taste and the way Han squealed every time his tongue ran over his. Huh. If that was the way he reacted, how would he react if Chewie licked the hole inside the hole too? Instead of just that sounded, the answer came swiftly. Han and Ark Han howled and arched his back, pressing his hips against Chewie's tongue. It felt quite empowering, much to cause that reaction as he wanted more of it. He pressed his tongue and further wiggling and twisting inside that tight hole to get much of the taste as possible. Feeling the clenching and muscles relaxing, the sounds coming in a constant stream, mouth were almost as rousing the pleas, whimpers, and moans or anything like you ever had before. It was quite addictive. Han was going out of his mind. There is no way to describe it. Chewie was eating him out of his skill that was driving him wild, sending his body from within. His cock stood hard between his eyes, drooling from his stomach, but he was barely aware. His ass has become the center of the world. The feel of Chewie's tongue inside him made him squeal and moan at a rate that would have embarrassed him if he wasn't so desperate for more. Blasted Chewie! He moaned. Just fuck me! Just fuck me! That amazing tongue pulled out, making Han keen in protest, but but it turned into a horse grunt. As something amazing heart just pressed inside. He arched his back, pressed his hips back, encouraging the Wookiee to press in further. And he did. Fuck, he did. Soon, Chewie's thighs were pressing hard against Han's ass, and then the human bracing himself, knowing that the intense pleasure was going to mix with excellent, delicious pain. Craved it. Chewie was waiting for the hole to cock was buried and relaxed around him. Staring at the human in wonder, his oldest friend, taking the cock as it was nothing, moaning with pleasure, and begging for more. He must be dreaming, but soon the human would realize what he got himself into when it started thrusting. It would hurt. There was no way of avoiding it, but he would not stop now. If the human wanted Wookiee cock, he was going to get Wookiee cock. No matter how much he screamed or begged Chewie to stop, he took a firm grip of quivering hips, slap, and started fucking him at a pace that was not too fast, but not too hard, but brought him maximum pleasure. The shrieks and squeals from the human beneath him was like music to the ears. Han's mouth hung open as a stream of noise poured in, as Chewie fucked him hard. The mix of pleasure as he pushed and pain as he pulled out, probably the most amazing feeling he had ever felt in his life. And he's been with some kinky, what the hell's that grammar? Kinky layers in his day, but nothing like this. The steel floor dug into his knee and arms, but there was just hard enough to keep him grounded in reality instead of disappearing into a haze of ecstasy as his friend rode his ass with a brutality that broke them both for a while. It was so good, too good, and he wanted more. You could feel Chewie's cock get slicker with every thrust. But when but whenever from saliva pre-cum anal juices or blood, he could really say perhaps a mix of four didn't matter all that mattered at this moment. This place was the stars going off head every time that monster cock rammed against his prostate, which is which unnervingly did at every thrust. His entire body shook with pleasure. His body was in tatters. His arse British throbbing with excellent pain. His cock so hard it hurt he never wanted it to stop. It was getting easier to fight the human now. He had loosened he had loosened slightly Loosen slice. Loosen slightly. if, and it loosened slightly and fit Chewie's clock like it's been designed to be mounted like this. Chewie ground with pleasure, stroking every snap, every heavy back as he snapped his hips forward, making his partner joy and cry out. He listened carefully for any hint of pain in the cry. All he heard was delirious pleasure. Satisfied, Chewie leaned forward and sunk his teeth in Han's neck, belonging as long to making him as belonging to Chewie as long as they lived. Han felt Chewie's sharp teeth bury himself in the flesh of his neck. His blood spurting into the Wookiee mouth, that coupled with Chewie's cock hitting his prostate, was enough to send him screaming over the edge into S2. His entire body locked up, his whole tightening on the intruder. His thighs shaking, eyes rolling back, toes curling as his cock spewed out pulse after pulse of, of cum all over his stomach and the floor. He fell forward, boneless, lost in the pleasure. He whites out. Chewie howled with pleasure as the conveying channel he was ramming his cock into him as the human released his seed. Screaming beneath him, he was triggering his own release, and he shoved his hips as far as he could and came like he had nothing come in a very long time. He could feel the knot at the base of his cock lock inside him till he was absorbed in his partner's body, knowing that Han was not a Wookiee female and therefore could not absorb the Chewie arranged his in a more comfortable position on top of his bliss house and settled down to wait hard to go to took and took for his not to go down, but then take and then he would take Han into the sleeping quarters and breed him again and in a bed this time. It would be comfier. Then he breathed his new mate all over the ship, so the human knew without a doubt who he belonged to. But first, he had he would have him again right here on the floor. So he'll have him again right here on the floor. After all, he was still erect and would most likely stay that way up to an hour. Might as well have a bit of fun. By the way, I know this is releasing in June, so this has no association with Prime Month. I just thought it would be funny. Anyway,